If you could live green, would you? I'm Nick Federoff, host of Things Green, where we introduce nuggets of green lifestyle from gardening, upcycling, answering your questions, sustainability, even discussing environmental issues. You can become more confident in making the right decisions for you and your family. So come along as we are Things Green. If you really think about it, gardening is kind of gruesome because there's things that die all the time. And one of the things that we have to understand is that sometimes you just can't save every single plant. Now, these particular plants have seen some great progress. They've done a lot of neat things. So we have to decide what goes and what stays. Well, those things that are the most productive, of course, they stay. And those that don't, they gotta go. Now, all of these tomatoes, I had one, two, there was a third one, but I had to rip it out. It was in really bad condition. All three of the tomatoes, they're pretty well spent, even though the center one, the cherry tomato, which by the way, if you're a beginning gardener, grow the cherry tomato, would you? Because the cherry tomato is so easy. It's almost a foolproof kind of a tomato to grow. And you get your tomatoes very quickly as opposed to if you grew something like these beefsteaks. And Chris, I like to take and label my tomatoes as clearly as possible, and that's exactly what we've done here. But look, see if you take a look at this, we've got our tomatoes. These have been on this plant for quite some time, and they have seen better days. So what we're going to do, we're going to toss them and we're going to put them inside of our compost pile. Now you're going to think, well, why would you put a tomato in a compost pile since it's part of the nightshade family? And nightshade family, of course, is a poisonous plant. Well, there's not that much toxicity in it to where it's going to make that huge of a difference. So, and what will end up happening is that the composting will indeed take in, get hot enough to where it'll kill all those impurities. Now, if it was a completely 100% compost-based, tomato-based kind of thing, I don't know, I'd think about that for a second. But you've never really heard of anybody having any kind of problems. Of course, if you're sensitive to it, it's a different story. All right, so we have just a couple tools we're gonna do. We're gonna have our gloves, we're gonna have our secateurs, and I brought a shovel. Sometimes we need the shovel, sometimes we don't. The reason being is because tomatoes, as well as all of our vegetables, they're not that deeply rooted. Now, these right here were like 12-inch containers, and the containers have sunken down to about half. This is the second year that I've had plants inside of these containers, and I can tell you this much right now, I will not plant any tomatoes in this planter for another 2 or 3 years. So crop rotation is extremely important whenever you're doing any kind of plantings. In fact, I've got 4 tomatoes over there, 1, 2, 3, as I said, I think I said that I pulled one out. So the first thing we're gonna do is kind of get these branches out. Now these are like viney branches. That's why we call them tomato vines. We don't call them tomato, well, we do call them tomato bushes. There are bushes, but we just kind of want to get some of this stuff out because it is just going to be easier to yank this thing out in the long run. Now, one of the nice things about using one of these cold tomato cages is, number one, this particular one's probably 10 years old. So you don't have to keep buying cages over and over and over again. Secondly, it is hands down the thickest, the most durable kind of plant that you've ever seen. Now, why am I going to be pulling out the tomatoes that already do have some tomatoes on there? As I mentioned, Mrs. Things Green said get rid of it. She actually doesn't like cherry tomatoes. She could do without them. I like them because, again, you just get something really quick, and there's nothing like going in the garden and getting a tomato and eating it. It's really, really kind of cool. So we're just going to take and pull this. You can see how quickly this process goes. Now, what's really interesting about this whole concept is that it is very common for a tomato plant at the base of the plant to get brown and crispy on you. So in its growing season, that's okay. But when the whole plant turns toasty like this, it's not producing any longer. And the other major reason why I'm pulling this out is because we're still getting eggplant, and there's still competition that's going along between these two plants. Between the tomatoes, they're pulling away the nutrients from the eggplant, and that's not very cool. Okay, now your tomato cages are always in a V shape, always in a V shape like this. So if I was to start yanking on this thing, I could have pulled the plant out and just laid it over my wheelbarrow and done stuff, but I think this is going to be a little bit easier right here, getting out a lot of it. I'm not going to cut it 100% to the ground just yet, because I'm going to see if I can actually pull it out without having to dig it out. So let's see, are we good there? I think we're good there. All right, let's pull this out. Okay, we're pulling it out. Nice. Maybe that's because I got the choo-choo train in the back that's helping me out. Now I did crush this eggplant a little bit. That's not good. You ever seen an eggplant flower before? I don't know if I'm going to sacrifice it or not. Now this is really a good example of how I normally say plants, not just plants, but vegetables. Vegetable gardens, they aren't necessarily the prettiest because this kind of stuff happens to them. And it's just not pretty to see it. All right, let's see if my brute strength, throw a little weight into it, see if this will pull out. 1, 2, 3, go. Yes, 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 yes. All right, so you see this? Look at this root system. It's not huge. It's, let's see, yeah, it's about this long. This is 6 inches right here. We've got some straggling. So you don't have to have a deep box. You don't have to have these things 12 inches tall. You can have 12 inches tall just for the ease of getting into it. I'm going to plant a bit over there that's this tall. Mrs. Things Green absolutely loves it because she can reach into it easily. In fact, I think she would rather have something like that. But it doesn't make sense for certain plants like tomatoes, because your tomatoes, if you have a 24-inch box and this thing is going to go up 6 feet. Did you see how big that cage was? Look at this. This cage is huge. Absolutely huge. This is a 6-foot cage. This is the size you want for your tomatoes. You don't want those cheap and cheesy ones that you find at the nursery. You want something that's just custom made and that's perfect for this. Okay, so I have a lot of weeds that are around here. So let's pull these weeds out. Now, when you have an organic garden, this is what happens. You get the weeds going. So we have to pull these things out. Get all these out. Just like this. I have some straggler plants over here. Now I'm just going to sacrifice this particular. Now I'll leave it. We'll leave it. We'll see what it looks like. Okay, now I did and I do have supports inside of these bell peppers. But the thing of it is that these bell peppers are they're much bigger. They took off bigger and better than I thought they would. That's another reason why I had the tomato plants side by side, because when they were smaller, they were able to support each other. So we have to do the same exact treatment over here. And as you can tell, it doesn't take too much time. Now remember, when we're talking about tomatoes, especially tomatoes, if you've never grown a tomato plant before, you go with these little itty bitty ones like this. And I'll show you, I'm gonna miss this, but like I said, it's just the way that it works sometimes. Delicious. Okay, so let's continue on. We're gonna pull these out, and then it's gonna give more room for my eggplant. I know I was telling you a story here for a second ago. Oh, this is what I was gonna say. When you're growing tomatoes, you have to remember that you don't want to overplant. Now, we use tomatoes like crazy here at the thingsgreen.com Botanical Gardens. We make salsa, we make just all kinds of crazy stuff. The tomato sandwich thing over here is phenomenal. It's absolutely wonderful. Okay, I've got a lot of tomatoes here. I'll probably come back later and pull off these little itty bitty tiny ones because you just don't want to be wasteful. But anyway, but these green ones right here, they'll get dumped. This guy's making a lot of racket. What do you say we take it off? Okay. So we're just going to cut away at this. And try to, when you're working, try to keep a decent workspace for yourself. You don't want to make it so that it's hard to clean up a second, third, fourth time. I like using the wheelbarrow. I get that is taller off the ground. And then once I use it, I can separate what I want, put it inside the compost bin. Let's see if I can pull this one out too. No problem. Nope, there is a problem. It's in there wonderfully. Okay, I literally thought I was going to have to dig that one out. All right, pull it, Nick, pull it. Okay, so I pull this out. We have all of our bushes coming out right here. So one of the things that I really enjoy is a good old-fashioned tomato sandwich. Mrs. Things Green makes these amazing cheese rolls, and what we do with them is we cut them open, smather a little mayonnaise in it, you cut your tomato up, stuff it with that. Oh, absolutely delicious. Or you could also do it with, let's see what we got. See, look at this. Isn't that beautiful? Now, waste not, want not. What does that mean? I have no idea. But I do know that you want to shake off the dirt off of the roots. That's really important because that dirt is necessary, and quite frankly, it's expensive. See, I've got some gnarly weeds here. Pull out the weeds. Okay, I'm gonna have to dig those out. Yeah, that's a weed. Can you see this? That's what happens when you don't pay attention to your garden. I like to try to get them on the smaller side, of course, but sometimes that doesn't work. Now, the chances, look at this pinnacle. Look at that. Oh, yeah. Do you think it'd be possible if I can get on my lounge chair and Mrs. Things Green would feed these to me like this? Yeah, ain't never gonna happen. Point is, that was delicious. You don't get any fresher than what happened just now. Now, am I gonna get tomatoes growing into things by volunteers because there was a lot of seeds? Absolutely. We have back here, last year I grew tomatoes, had a whole bunch of tomatoes grow up, and I just wanted to keep one wild one. It was in this one, it grew, it was nice. Now what I'm gonna do is, because this is just kind of big and overgrown over here, I'm just gonna kind of push things to the side, being very careful because look at, oh, I'll pick this. This is eggplant. You ever have eggplant before? Eggplant is absolutely delish. What you do is picked a little bit too young, but I don't know, it's pretty good color though. Anyway, what you're gonna do is I like them thin, and then you take and you put egg on it, and then you put some panko on it, the breadcrumbs. You can salt it if you want. And then what you do is you put it in an air fryer. Once it's in that air fryer, oh, you wanna make it so it's crispy. Make these things like chips. So that is not gonna go in there. I'm gonna disappear for a second, I think, and I'm gonna go put it right there. So now what we'll do is, I think we're just gonna leave this just the way that it is. And this is gonna grow up nice and strong. I've got a whole bunch more of these eggplants on this side. So, yeah. Oh, this is what I want to do. Almost forgot. This right here is a soil conditioner, and it's called humic acid. Humic acid is not acid. Even the scientists don't even know why they put that word behind it. But it's a natural organic product, and you don't need a whole lot. Now, because tomatoes in particular are really, really heavy feeders, they really absorb and take a lot of nutrients outside of the soil. It's not a bad idea to condition the soil. Now, I don't have to condition a lot of it. Now, mind you, the plants that were here, they were competing with these plants over here. And, you know, so I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's a pretty nasty material as far as dirtiness is concerned. Gets all over. I'm just gonna sprinkle a little bit where this was, and I'm gonna sprinkle a little bit where this plant was, and then the other plant was over here, and I'm gonna put a little bit over there. Now, that right there will help condition the soil. I'll come back. In fact, let's just do it right now. You know, you're here, you might as well do it, right? Just move it into the soil a little bit like this. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. And this is going to be conditioning. It's going to be replenishing. It's going to help me out. And then if I remember, we'll come back and we'll rip these out for you. And I'll show you how to continue that whole process. I think this year, or I should say for the following year, what I'm going to end up doing is raising the soil up a little bit. Got some great compost over there. Now I have to decide, am I going to put in soil or am I going to put in compost? Well, I'm a big fan of using just good old-fashioned soil, already made soil, because soil does have the properties of compost. And when you put that in and you have, let's just say you had too much compost. Compost is good, but it's not soil. But if you had soil mixed in with the compost that you already have, you're making any sense? I am. So you take and you just mix it up really well. I'll give you a great example. This bed that's behind me over here, we never filmed how we put it all together. And again, maybe we will this next time around. But what we did is that we just took the existing soil that was there, and it was decent soil, there's no doubt about that. And then, but I added on like 6-inch layer of regular soil. If I wanted to, I could have just left it alone. That's a lazy person's way of gardening. So like with this right here, we could just put another 4 inches or maybe even 6 inches of soil. It could be raised up quite a bit here. In fact, all the planter bits could be. And we could have allowed it to what do you call it? Just put it right on top, and then we could plant directly in that. Now, that's almost kind of like a no-till method, because you're just putting right on top. I'm not a big fan of the no-till method, because if farmers aren't using that method, and they're not, by the way, any legitimate farmer, and I know that's fighting words, legitimate farmer, they're not using the no-till method. They get out there with their machinery, they dig everything up and such. It's just you know, that's just like the lasagna method of gardening. Does it work? Yeah, it works, but does it really work? Yeah, it does. It's a like I says, I'm all about taking shortcuts. This is my shortcut. Okay, I wish that train would take a shortcut and not be around in the neighborhood, but what are you going to do? I think it makes my plants grow better. But we'll take in, well, as I said, we'll put the soil on top, and we could either just leave it, or because these planter beds are so small, they're only 8 feet by 3 feet wide. I would take and I like mixing it in. I mean, I've got the rototiller. Why not, right? Use the rototiller, you mix it all in, and everything is good. So that's what I was going to do with this thing right here, this planter bed. Now, because I've opened it up, I've taken away a little bit of shade. And from the eastern to the western, this does get full sun, but the shade may end up burning some of these plants. It's possible because there was so much shade in here for them, or it just make them absolutely uber awesome. Oh, by the way, I noticed something right here. Here's a, oh, this is from the other one. Yeah. Thought I was going to say something fancy, that it started off as a new plant. But anyway, yeah, my existing cages that are in here, they're only this tall. It's a little itty bitty cage. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 cages that are kind of propping them up because they got so big, and I don't want to say unruly, but they got unruly. Yeah, they're spilling over, but they're still kind of propped up. They're still doing really good. I mean, look at this right here. Can you see this? Yeah, that's nice. And if you've ever seen that flower, let me see if I can find one. There's someone over here. Oh, here. I will sacrifice this flower for you, okay? Because it is just drop dead gorgeous. There we go. Can you see this? This is so cool. Yeah, that right there's an eggplant flower. I have to tell you, I love the look of this flower. It is just gorgeous. It smells like absolutely nothing. And you have these big leaves, and these big leaves are designed to help protect and cover the eggplant itself. Because as you know, the eggplant has it's real soft, it's real shiny, absolutely beautiful. A lot of recipes you can do with it. In fact, one of the things that we do is that we take and we cut it up. Of course, you cook it with your squash and such. But you could take your, you could take this and make like a poor man's caviar. I forget what they call that. I call it poor man's caviar with the tomatoes and the eggplant, and oh, just absolutely delicious. Okay, so that's the way that we do it over here at thethingsgreen.com Botanic Gardens. You never know, maybe I'll prune up a little bit over here. Chances are I won't, unless Mrs. Things Green makes me. It's par for the course. Okay, so that's how we do it, all right? Remember, whenever out in the yard and garden, green side up. Kind of looks like we're growing plants of biblical proportions over here, don't you think? This right here is a bed of basil. Now, the Bible does talk about bitter herbs, and I can't help but wonder if this isn't what they were talking about. Now, of course, this sweet basil, you would think, it's sweet, right? But if you allow it, like all of these other herbs here, from the lemon to the Italian to, we just have a menagerie of them here, I wonder if they didn't allow them purposely to grow like this so they can get the seeds off of it and grow more to turn bitter, because that's what happens when it flowers. So if you don't want those bitter herbs, it's best for you to take and to cut them back, and it will also make your plant bushier and it'll make it healthier. And then when you come to use it for your culinary purposes, you're not going to be surprised about any kind of bitter taste. I can't tell you how important it is to water your lawn during installation and afterwards to get it properly established. For every couple hundred square feet, give your sod a water break. With a hose, lightly water to prevent wilting or heat loss. Be strategic about it, because you don't want to water the dirt that isn't sodded yet. Think for a moment what a muddy mess that would be. Plus, this will give you time to stretch and survey the work you've done. Once that gorgeous lawn has been installed, we need to remember turf and soil have a symbiotic relationship because both are living organisms, and in order for lawn genocide not to happen, we need to follow the 7-3-2-1 watering guide after the sod has been installed. For the first 7 days, you water 3 times a day at 7 a.m., 11 a.m., and 2 p.m. For the next 7 days, you water 2 times a day at 7 a.m. and 2 p.m. For the final 7 days, you water once a day at 7 a.m. After that, your lawn is established and it only needs about 1 1/4 inches of water per week. Thanks for joining me on another excursion of Things Green. Our goal is to educate, inform, and entertain so you can become exposed to a green lifestyle inside and outside of the home and community, all on your terms. Join me next time right here as we help you with Things Green.